Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the town of Pelham for Monday, October 2nd, 2017 to order. Before we start our formal agenda this evening, I think it would be appropriate for us, given what has occurred in our world, especially in North America over the last couple of days, that perhaps we pause for a moment of silence for the victims of the shootings in Las Vegas. It's now, the death toll is at 59. And also there was a shooting in Edmonton over the weekend as well. So I would ask that we take a moment of silence to think about victims and their families, and think about how we might bring about more peace in our world. Thank you. Now we'll start with the singing of our national anthem. I would ask all who are able to rise and Councillor Papp to lead us.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy Son's command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Councillor Papp. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Council. Now we move to the approval of our agenda. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the agenda for the October 2nd, 2017 regular meeting of the Council be adopted. I think there was a notice that went out to Council that there was an additional item in closed session that staff are recommending that we add. I agree with it. I'm looking for a councillor to move and second this, that an additional item, closed session item under section 239(2)C, pending acquisition or disposition of property, file L07 2017-05S. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Kersey is seconder. Councillor Durley. I'll call a question on that. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? Any opposed? Thank you. So that has been added. Any other additions or changes on the agenda? There being none, I call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries as amended. Next is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Any conflicts of interest any members of council may have. I think, Councillor Papp, you have a...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 18, the in-camera item, I do have a conflict since I do work for that particular corporate group.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's been noted. Any other conflicts of interest that any members of council may have? There are no others. Can that be so noted in the minutes? Thank you very much. We start off with some delegations this evening. The first is Roger Ali, President and CEO of the One Foundation, and Joe Maggiolo. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. The clerk is coming to assist you to set up, and normally we have the presentation right here at the podium, so please come on forward. Thank you, Mr. Ali.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the invitation, Your Worship and members of the council, staff, and certainly the audience here. We want to give you an update on the One Foundation for the Niagara Health System, give a short report on the funds that you've provided and where it is supported, and also to talk about a current campaign. So the presentation that you've had
Perhaps you can help him.
You should be able to just either press return or the
And-
down cursor.
Or the space bar.
The arrow down.
Okay, use that one. Okay, thank you. So I want to start by giving you just an overview of the Niagara Health Foundation. The Niagara Health Foundation exists to support the Niagara Health System, and in so doing, we raise funds to support capital equipment, also capital projects, special patient priorities, and also to support research and patient education. And in so doing, we're fulfilling the purpose of the Niagara Health System, which is extraordinary caring to every person, every time. And our overall vision is the vision of Niagara Health, which is to build a healthier Niagara. The sites that we're talking about within the Niagara Health System include the Douglas Memorial Site, the Greater Niagara General Site, Niagara on the Lake, Port Colborne, the St. Catharines Site, and Welland. I also want to share a few things in terms of the number of patients served, but also in particular the number of patients from the Pelham area. So in total, we support all of our 12 municipalities, that is over 434,000 Niagara residents, but in particular, when we looked at 2016, we had over 27,000 visits from the residents of Pelham to either one of our emergency departments or urgent care facilities. And in particular, what's very interesting is that medical imaging is a key thread that runs through most of the patient care experience. And we had over 6,100 patients who came from Pelham for some type of outpatient medical imaging, and also 1,400 ultrasounds that some resident had experienced. So we're also proud to say that over 40,000 surgeries overall were provided to the community, and in particular 3,000 births through our Women's and Babies program. Now, an interesting statistic that you probably know, but I thought it's worth mentioning is that the One Foundation focuses on equipment and supporting equipment because the government does not provide the funds for those upgrades or for pieces of equipment. So it's a significant investment that the foundation does in order to support the Niagara Health System. I want to share some of the recent successes since 2014, when our 6 foundations amalgamated to the One Foundation. And over $9.5 million was actually flowed from our fundraising efforts to the Niagara Health System to provide priority equipment and redevelopment projects. And I want to give you some examples of where that has made an impact on the patient care experience. In particular, it has enhanced the Walker Family Cancer Center. We have ran an endoscopy campaign where we replaced essential pieces of equipment. We have improved the ophthalmology program in Welland, as well as replaced and upgraded several pieces of equipment in our medical imaging, which is an essential part of the patient care experience, not to mention the bursaries and programs for students who are studying medicine and also going into post-secondary education. If you just look at the slide here, it gives you some examples of the various sites in particular. An example at the St. Catharines site and the Welland site is that we provided specialty beds. Some of these are birthing beds, some of these are actual specific patient beds in patient rooms. We upgraded the hemodialysis machines at the St. Catharines Center. A new microscope was purchased for the Welland site, as well as a central monitoring system for intensive care unit at the Welland site. And just to share and to say first, thank you for your continued support. For the past 33 years, the town of Pelham has provided close to $600,000 through a variety of means. And in particular, we were the recipient of the Mayor's Gala in 2017, so thank you for that contribution. But in particular, there are two that are notable. Most recently, there was a pledge of $100,000 to the Welland site for the mammography unit, and that certainly has made a difference. It's quite timely in light of October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And then a previous pledge of $125,000 that also supported the Welland site and the ongoing equipment needs. I know that you've certainly been very visible and have supported the elimination draw. So that, in a nutshell, are the areas in which you have supported us. I want to tell you a little bit about how you can help in terms of our current campaign, which is to do with medical imaging. And we launched this campaign last year. It's a $2.2 million campaign that has been identified for the priority needs for medical imaging. And those are things that are specifically around upgrading our CT scan machines, our ultrasound machines, our x-ray machines. And we're at the midpoint right now of this campaign. And the request is for your continued support to help us in meeting this target of $2.2 million. All our patients benefit from medical imaging, whether they're going through a cancer experience or a cardiac experience, or they're just there in emergency. So this is really a critical campaign for us to upgrade the equipment, to move from computed technology to one that's fully digital. Some of our sites are still going through that process to ensure that we have the best technology possible for patient care. So that is the overall components of my presentation. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I just want to pause to see if you have any questions.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of council have any questions for Mr. Ali? Councillor Pat?
Very quickly, thank you, Mr. Ali, for your presentation. And yes, we have been very supportive of the efforts here, not only throughout Niagara, but locally at the Welland Hospital. I guess my question to you is, and through the mayor, is have you formally asked us? I'm not aware of any request for any sort of consideration for funds towards your $2.2 million efforts.
No, this is the first step, and as a follow-up, I was going to present you with a proposal with a specific request. So that's kind of the two parts.
That answers that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pat.
Others? Questions? We know that you changed the name of the foundation to One Foundation, and
Yes.
that was an amalgamation of
The
the various foundations. But also, I understood that Niagara Health has changed its name as well. It's now Niagara Health, not Niagara Health System. I don't know if you were able to comment on that.
Yes, so certainly I know when I visited in the spring, we talked about it. So our name, One Foundation, was born about by the 6 foundations coming together in 2014 during the amalgamation process, and to ensure parity, that name was suitable at this point in time. In light of the Niagara Health System having that name as Niagara Health, the foundation board made the decision to change the name to the Niagara Health Foundation to better reflect serving and working closely with Niagara Health. So the letters patent have been received by the ministry. We have our official business name switched through Revenue Canada, and we are just going through a rebranding process. And once we have concluded that, which timeline is November, we will then be switching our name to the Niagara Health Foundation and then be able to rebrand the organization
Right.
with that new.
Oh, that's great. So it'll all be about Niagara Health, with health in Niagara being prominent.
Yes, and we believe that that will be more easily understood
Yes.
by all residents, and certainly to be able to resonate in our goal as being the charity of choice for healthcare in the region and philanthropy.
Very good. Thank you very much. You had a little bit about some events that are coming up.
Yes, so I'm ending by just highlighting some of the events. Of course, the elimination draw for 2018, that date's been set in January, January 31st. Our annual gala, which is also going to support the diagnostic equipment medical imaging campaign on February 24th. Our Kids Ultimate Challenge is usually the second Sunday in June. And also next year will be our 10th anniversary for the Big Move Cancer Ride on September 9th, 2018.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation. It has now been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. Be it resolved, the Council receive the presentation from Roger Ali, President and CEO of One Foundation, and Joe Maggiolo, who's in the back as Chair of the Board of Directors respecting Niagara Health and the 2017-18 priorities for One Foundation for information. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. We appreciate the update. We look forward to additional information coming to us, especially about your name change.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Now, Mr. Bram Cotton is here to present. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Bram Cotton is here to present regarding the Niagara Sport Commission. Thank you for joining us this evening. I don't think that we've necessarily given you kudos and the rest of the organization kudos for winning the bid yet. You came to this chamber and you asked for some support the last time you were here, and we gave you that support, and Niagara region really, all the municipalities, everyone came behind you. So congratulations on winning that bid for the Canada 2021 Summer Games. That's exceptional.
Well, thank you very much, and obviously your support in that was critical. As we went to the committee itself, up the Canada Games Council, it was important that we showed One Niagara, and your support in that was certainly instrumental. I'd like to thank you for that, but also like to thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Bram Cotton with the Niagara Sport Commission. I'd just like to give you a brief overview of what the Niagara Sport Commission is, what we do. Obviously, you do have some take on it based on the recent Summer Games bid, but I'd like to talk to you about what we do on more an ongoing basis. That was one of those things where it was a one-off, a once-in-a-25-year opportunity for Niagara and Ontario. So I'd like to just talk a little bit of what we are and how perhaps we can work together going forward, especially with your beautiful new community center coming online.
I think you just have to hit a button. What is that button?
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
The Niagara Sport Commission is a not-for-profit regional development agency that uses sport as a catalyst for economic and community development, economic through sports tourism, and active, healthy lifestyle programs. We have an annual supporters program. So we try to work regionally. We work with partners in St. Catharines, Welland, Pelham, Fort Erie, and we actively go out to bid on sporting events. Canada Summer Games is probably the largest that Niagara will have the opportunity to bid on and host. We can be parts of other games. If an Olympics was to come to Toronto, we could be part of that. But from a sole source here in Niagara, that's probably the largest game that we'd be involved in. But some of the events that we have run the Under-18 World Women's Hockey Championship that was in St. Catharines in 2016. We are currently going to be hosting in June of 2018 the 2018 FIBA, the Americas Boys Basketball Championship. So the best 17-year-old basketball players in the Americas will be joining us. Many of those players have gone on to be first-round draft picks in the NBA draft within a couple of years of playing in these championships. And you may have heard Canada actually was recently the Under-19 World Men's Basketball Championship. And this Under-18 event next year will be the beginning of their defense of that World Championship because it's a 2-year process. Those are our high-profile events. But in many cases, we bid on regional and provincial events, which have a real economic impact on communities across Niagara. On a yearly basis, we host the Ontario Basketball, it's called the Ontario Cup, but the Ontario Basketball Championships at the Under-13, 15, under 17 levels. Those are events that are done across the region in gyms, in school gyms, in community gyms, and you know, those folks that are coming in stay in the hotels, they go to the restaurants, and I must thank the city for putting hardwood FIBA-lined courts in the new community center, because that'll allow us to host Ontario Championships going forward here in the community of Pelham. So that was great foresight in doing that. So I'm here to bring to you information of what the Niagara Sport Commission is, what we do, but also an opportunity to partner with us going forward. We have what we call a supporters program, like a Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to present an opportunity for Pelham to be part of that as we go out to look at bids, and we go out and build relationships across the country for hosting sporting events, and we can tailor that around the facilities that are here and important to the community of Welland. So we do have this annual supporters program that I talked to Mayor Dave about, and just would hope that you guys would consider joining it. This is a recent recap on the under 18 event. We hosted 34,500 fans for that event, of which was doubled the record, the most they had ever held. And it created an economic impact of about $5 million for the Nagre region. We had teams that were playing and staying across the region, not just in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, but we had games happening up in Beamsville, down in Port Colborne. It really became a regional event, which we hope for all our events to be. Some of the things that we're proposing in 2018 and 2019, additional Ontario basketball championships, obviously the FIBA that I spoke about, and then further Ontario basketball. And there's also an opportunity to host Ontario Basketball League tournaments on weekends as well going forward. So, that's my presentation. I would just ask for consideration within your rec or your economic development budget to join our supporters program on a yearly ongoing basis and support the operations that we do, so we can go out and publicize and promote Niagara and Pelham within Niagara to sporting organizations across the country that have these events. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Questions for Mr. Cotton? Perhaps you can send us some information about what that looks like, and it might make sense with the new community center as part of our budget deliberations.
I'd be happy to do that.
Other questions from members of council? So that's June 2018. I think we spoke about that. I don't think the center will be quite up and running at that time, although they are on schedule for the community center, but
just a little bit off in the timing
Yeah.
for our Ontario basketball events in 2018, also our FIBA. We would have been looking to typically host practices at your facility during the FIBA,
Right.
but obviously it doesn't work. But there's always opportunities down the line, and I
Future
do
years.
commend you as a council for bringing that wonderful facility online. It's going to be a great addition to the infrastructure here that we have in the Niagara to host sport tourism events and benefit the economy.
great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. So it's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the council receive the presentation from Brian Cotton, CEO of the Niagara Sport Commission, respecting the 2018-19 Niagara Sport Commission Supporters Program for information. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, and we'll look forward to that information. Maybe it's something we can think about as in the budget deliberations. Thank you very much, Mr. Cotton. The next item is a report from Regional Councillor. Councillor Beatty did provide a written update, but he also indicated to me over the weekend that he is out of town at a conference for the NPCA, so he wouldn't be here this evening. You see the report here, I think, of interest, if I might highlight on his behalf. There is a topic here about parking prohibition in the town of Pelham, Lookout Street to Park Street. And that's simply to deal with the new resurfaced area. When this came to committee, I did ask staff, we haven't heard back about the motion that this council approved regarding the speed limit reduction in that area. So the motion was to reduce the speed from Effingham to Park Street, I think, certainly in front of E.L. Crosley School. It is 50 in the dip, So staff are to get back to us on that. And maybe I don't know, yeah, where the letter went, but anyways, at the region, I've been waiting for it for all these months. In terms of the other aspects of elements, there was some debate under Planning and Development Committee. Lots of debate about the Smarter Niagara Incentive Program for 2017. The region, because the program has been so successful, the region has actually used up all of its allocation from the 2017 budget. It did dip into, or staff recommended that we dip into the reserves to, and there's enough in the reserves to handle this, to deal with those incentives that have already been approved by various cities and towns across Niagara, but that there wouldn't be any new ones from sort of the middle of September until the end of the year. I'll make sure that we fight hard to ensure that those dollars are there, because as you may recall, for every incentive dollar that's given, the calculation has been, or has shown, that it's $9 of private sector investment that's gone on. So that $1 turns into $9. So you have $10 for that $1. So that is something. But I did ask the question and received a copy of all of the projects, saying that all of those projects that were approved by local councils were to be funded, but they were kind of holding it off for a few months. And the other issue is that there was some discussion about Smithville wanting to undertake an urban growth strategy in their area, adding, trying to get the numbers right, I think 800 acres of land to the urban boundary around Smithville. So the motion was to initiate the study. It has to be initiated by the region. Mm-hmm. So Regional Council supported that. So that's my update on behalf of Councillor Beatty. I'll be open to any questions. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask Councillor Beatty whether the Seniors Quality Improvement Report is available and if it could be forwarded.
Yes, I'm sure it is, and we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved that the September 14th, 2017 report submitted by Regional Councillor Beatty be received for information. And if we can add to that, that we get that, circulate that report on seniors. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we have minutes for adoption. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Junkin. Be it resolved, following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the special meeting of council on September 11th, on September 18th, the regular council meeting minutes of September 18th, and the special council meeting minutes of September 20th. Any errors or omissions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Next is consent agenda items for to be considered in block. Are there any items that council would like to lift for separate consideration? That is other action than what's been recommended. There being none, it's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved that the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 1. Presentation and recommendations arising from the Policy and Priorities Committee for Council approval. Be it resolved the Council approve the recommendations from the Policy and Priorities meeting of September 18th as presented. We also have the minutes of that meeting that they be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. We have our staff reports of routine nature for action or information. First is an amendment to the terms of reference for the Pelham Public Art Advisory Committee. This matter came up because members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council are very interested in art and getting involved in this, and it was noticed that there wasn't a spot for MYAC members. So the motion is, be it resolved, the council receive the report. How might we amend the Pelham Public Art Advisory Committee terms of reference to include a Mayor's Youth Advisory Council member, and the council approves the amendment to the terms of reference to include a member of EMIAC. We also have information here regarding the Niagara Healthy Kids Community Challenge, Theme 4, and the resolution be it resolved that the town of Pelham continues to support the Niagara Healthy Kids Community Challenge through an annual contribution of $1,000 for administration of the grant, and that the town continues to endorse and participate and support Theme 4 with the focus of reducing screen time for children and families in Niagara. Municipal grant application period 2017 extension. Staff are recommending an extension. Therefore, the recommendation be it resolved the council approve an extension for the application period for the 2018 municipal grants to be open until Halloween, October 31st, 2017. We have action correspondence of a routine nature. The Pelham Historical Society request for heritage designation and consideration. And the motion be it resolved the council receive the correspondence from the Pelham Historical Society dated September 18th, 2017 for information, and the correspondence be referred to staff for consideration during new development proposal negotiations. We have a letter from the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 613. Be it resolved the council receive the correspondence dated September 18th from the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 613 regarding the 2017 Poppy campaign, and the council supports the canvassing of businesses and citizens in Pelham through the placement of Poppy boxes during the campaign period from October 27th through to November 11th. Then we have information correspondence items, and the resolution is be it resolved that the following correspondence items be received for information. And these are Regional Road 20 parking prohibition, you see that I spoke about earlier, harm reduction program enhancement, letter from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Niagara Regional Housing, Killarney resolution regarding the Ambulance Act and Fire Protection Prevention Act, thank you letter from One Foundation, thank you letter from the Ministry of Transportation for our meeting with them at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and also from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for meeting with them at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And then we have committee minutes for information. The Pelham Active Transportation Committee minutes of their meeting of June 20th. The Pelham Community Center Oversight Committee meeting minutes of July 4th. And the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee minutes of September 9th, 2017. These are slightly different because there is a motion associated with them to appoint members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory to various town committees. So the motion is, be it resolved that council receive the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council minutes dated September 9th, 2017 for information, and the council endorse and support the appointment of EMIAC members to the following town committees. Seniors Advisory Committee, Tessa Piccolo and McKenna Belding. The Active Transportation Committee, Ben Bonesteel and Ella Robert. The Summerfest Committee, Sophia Labrachosa and Ava Colangelo. And finally, the Beautification Committee, Sydney Bergevin and Natalie Anderson. The first person listed is the primary. The second is the second contact if the primary can't be there. Questions or comments on any of those items under the consent agenda? Councillor Ribbiak.
I wonder if you might lift 954 just for further discussion, some greater discussion with regard to that. That's with regard to Niagara Regional Housing.
I'm sorry? What did you want to?
Lift 954, Niagara Regional Housing.
You want to make a different motion that we receive it?
I'd like to discuss it, and maybe.
Well, okay, let's see. I've already put it on the, so go ahead.
I'm sorry, I may have missed your request that we
You
lift
did.
it.
That's okay. Go ahead.
My apologies. Read with interest the report from Niagara Regional Housing. Now I got to find it again, sorry. And because of questions that I had received, I was looking for information on the report with regard to their waiting list. They talk about their waiting list and they tell us who's on that waiting list. But I still have questions with regard to how long applicants remain on the waiting list. And I guess I have some question with regard to how we know that the waiting list is being managed effectively and equitably. And I ask that question not because I have any personal knowledge one way or the other, but because that is frequently an observation made by people that somehow they're on the waiting list for a long, long, long time. Other people end up going in. Why not them? There's some reference in the report to some priority classifications, but I'm not sure that people necessarily receive those kinds of explanations. So I'm wondering whether we might receive some of that information. Request the region, Niagara Housing, to either come to us and talk to us about it, or perhaps write to us and explain that. And again, I apologize for having missed your request.
No,
to
that's
lift
okay. I think if colleagues are okay, your idea of asking them to make a presentation, we did receive a presentation from the Niagara Regional Housing back in, I think it was December 2015.
It's been a couple of years.
Or November 2015. But, there is a new executive director, a new executive officer, and a new chair. So we could perhaps add to that, if it's okay with council, that we could invite them to make a presentation specifically to address the waiting list, and then anything else they want to inform us about. Okay, thank you. Anyone else to that motion? We'll deal with it that way? Okay. Any other items on the consent agenda, Councillor Papp?
Just quickly, under the items related to the harm reduction program, I do hope, I guess it'll be before Regional Council this Thursday, to approve the receipt of the $250,000 from Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care.
Yes.
Okay. One thing that I would request, and through you and to Councillor Beatty, that any information related to the program, which I hope and I know they do, is distributed to all 12 municipalities and make it notable. We recently, to my attention, but how could say, anonymously, there were 2 young people who passed away with the use of an opioid in our area. And I don't think people are realizing how critical this is to make them understand how important it is to not only use the offsetting medication, but just the use of these narcotics themselves. So at some point, maybe later on, we'll have them come and do a presentation to us, just to, and it brought the 2 people that passed were in their 30s and had other struggles, but it also brought attention to mind that in Toronto, I understand there's a person that passes away every day. So I think it's something that we need to keep a very close eye on, and I congratulate the Public Health Department for being able to gain this money and use it effectively across the area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, council, so this letter is signifying that council did receive the money and did approve it, so Regional Council, so that has already been done in September. You may have seen in the newspaper that there was a presentation last week at Public Health,
Right.
with some mothers of individuals that
Correct.
died from opioid overdose. So there is an overarching committee, as the report states, and what was recommended, is being recommended at Regional Council on Thursday, is that that committee gets kind of expanded, and that there be more regular updates. So I can raise that item in terms of making sure that we get the message out to the local councils and therefore to the public
Yep.
about kind of the strategy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any others on that topic? Any others on any other topics? I received, or noted with interest, the letter from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. And they're taking the lead on the presentations that staff and Councillor Papp and I gave at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. We asked that we wanted to work together with the ministry and the government itself, and they were providing and saying that they're amenable to that, and also suggested that we raise the topic that we were discussing with them with the Ministry of Infrastructure and they gave us some names there. So I think, Mr. CAO, that's something that we certainly need to, that's good news. We need to follow up with them. They're saying that they'd be happy to work further with us as we investigate the options that we presented, talking about wealth creation and development of communities, et cetera. So I know that's definitely seen as a positive. So perhaps we can add that to the list of follow-ups. Okay, thank you. If colleagues agree, and you do, thank you. Anything further on any of the other items? All right, I'm going to call the question on those items with those embedded directions in them, inviting a member of the NRH to come in and also to follow up on this letter from the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we move to staff reports requiring action. It has been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Junkin. Be it resolved, the Council receive and endorse the 2018 Strategic Plan Map, October 2nd, 2017. The document be referred to staff to complete the initiatives and present the final strategic plan to Council by November 6th, 2017. Questions or comments regarding that? Some great work the Council and staff did. Senior staff working on the Town of Pelham strategies for the next phase, certainly for the next year and beyond, recognizing our vision and mission and also our values, and then the goals and objectives and priorities for the next period of time. This will help form the basis for the town's budget. So we look forward to staff coming back with kind of how this all shakes down in terms of the initiatives, but some great work. And so thank you, Mr. CAO, for overseeing that on behalf and other staff who are helping that day to work on this plan. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the Council approve the terms of the $45,000 capital funding provided to the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungeling Airport Commission as a loan at 3.5% interest amortized over a 10-year term with annual payments of $5,410.86 with a payment commencing in June 2018. I'm going to turn it to Councillor Ribiak, our representative on the Airport Commission and also the chair. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To refreshen our memory, you'll recall that over the past couple of years, we have worked hard at developing a debenture of $250,000 for use by the airport in for capital projects that were necessary, septic tank, roof, that sort of thing. It was approved, but municipalities in their wisdom determined that rather than go through the process of a debenture, given that the amount of money was, in the scale of things, less than perhaps which would make a debenture justifiable, they determined that they should provide the money as a grant. Much appreciated by the airport. One of the municipalities, however, felt that their portion should be administered as a loan. By turning it into a loan, it would require repayment over time. The mechanics of that are interesting in that we receive our funding largely from the municipalities, so the municipalities would receive in their budget request an amount to service the debt. It may sound silly, but perhaps it's not, because there is a debate going on, as we know, within the region to take over governance and control of the airports, and it may be that the municipality in question sees that it would be useful to have that amount of money on the books as a loan in the event that the region at some point takes over. It makes perfect sense. However, it probably wouldn't work to have only one municipality offer us that money as a loan, that all the municipalities who are participating ought to deal with the money as a loan on the same basis. And that's why this bylaw needs to come forward and be approved in order to to provide us that grant in the form of a loan so that it can be ultimately repaid in the event that governance and control changes hands. So I don't know if that helps. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, I think it helps, but let's see if there's any questions for further clarity. Members of council? Thank you very much. Shall I call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much for explaining that, and look forward to this and those works being done. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. Be it resolved that Watson and Associates Economists Limited be authorized to complete the necessary background study for the implementation of a new development charge bylaw at a cost of $39,900 plus HST, and that the development charges development-related studies reserve be used to fund 90% of the development charge bylaw and the remaining 10% to come from the planning reserve, and that staff report back to committee of the whole with a draft background study in the first quarter of 2018 for consideration and review. Questions or comments? Council some time ago directed staff to undertake a review of the development charges. We certainly knew that that has to occur, and these have certain limits in terms of time. So this is just the next logical extension of that, and it is paid for by the development charges that are collected, 90%. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. This is Bylaw 3924, 2017, being a bylaw to appoint Judy Shepherd as Deputy Clerk for the Corporation of the Town of Pelham and to repeal and replace Bylaw 3854, 2017. Questions, comments? Councillor Papp.
I just wanted to add, and I'm sure on behalf of all the members of council and yourself, Judy was here previously on an interim basis, then left and has come back. And she has demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's very competent and capable to assume these duties, and I'm very pleased. She does an incredible job with the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee, plus takes over many times whenever Nancy's not around, and I think we just got ourselves a real superstar, and we're building a real good, and I'm welcome Judy back on a permanent basis. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Papp. I know that all of council echoes your comments, so please pass that along to Ms. Shepherd. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Now we move to motions, and I'm going to vacate the chair. Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Mayor?
All right, thank you, members of council. Mr. Mayor, we now move to motions and notice of motions, and the very first one, 15.1, is a motion to initiate an independent third-party audit of the parkland over dedication and 2015 excess parkland dedication agreement. It's been moved by Mayor Augustine and seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. If you want, members, I can read through all the whereases if you wish, or we can move right. All right, so if that's the consent, you want me to read through all the whereases?
Yes.
Okay. Whereas the council and the staff of the town pride themselves on being open and transparent, and whereas the town has provided complete details and answered all questions generated by some members of Regional Council, some members of the community, by presenting a 335-page comprehensive response document, an addendum to March 2017 motion at Regional Council, answering all citizens' questions, including during an evening with the experts panel, disproving all claims and accusations made by a Niagara developer at the Regional Council. Whereas despite these answers and complete documentation, some members of the local community continue to ask questions about the 3.3 parkland over dedication to the town by Fonthill Gardens and a 2015 excess parkland dedication agreement between the town of Fonthill Gardens. And whereas Deloitte Canada has provided the town with an independent third-party audits of the town's financial statements for the past 6 years with unmodified independent auditors' reports that are free from any material misstatements. And whereas KPMG would be an acceptable supplier of services to the town of Pelham having ranked second in the 2016 tender by the town of Pelham for independent third-party auditing services. Therefore, be it resolved that the Pelham Town Council directs staff to retain the forensic auditor experts with KPMG Canada to undertake an independent third-party audit of all transactions and documents related to the 3.3 parkland overdedication to the town by Fonthill Gardens and a 2015 access parkland dedication agreement between the town and Fonthill Gardens, and that KPMG presents a public report of their findings with costs to undertake the audit directly to council at a meeting before the end of November 2017, and that this resolution be circulated to Niagara Regional Council for their October 5th, 2017 meeting, to all Niagara Regional Municipal Councils, to all Niagara MPPs, and to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to local news media, and to KPMG, and likewise be posted on the town's website. I'm open to comments and questions. We'll start, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Papp. I certainly appreciate you taking the chair as I'm putting this motion forward, and I do appreciate Councillor Ribiak working with me on it and also supporting it. This has been an issue we've been dealing with for a number of months. What came about as a really some regional councillors putting forward a motion, not coming to the town, not asking myself about it, but just putting forward a motion with 13 accusations about Pelham's debt and finances and property taxes, has turned into a many-month ordeal. We were concerned at the time when the motion came forward about what people in the town might think. And so we, as the motion talks about, we staff put forward an excellent report, 335 pages, there are a few more pages in here, but 335 pages, and keep adding to it, of all of the answers that we've provided. We also hosted an evening with the experts, and members of council were there. Again, we actually had the individuals who are the experts in this, who advise council to be able to answer the questions from the community directly. It's not through council, not through staff, but directly to those experts. And we answered all of the questions that were asked. There were about 100 people in attendance for that session, and 17 people asked questions, some of them multiple times, multiple questions, and they received those answers. We also sent staff to a June 12th Regional Audit Committee meeting and answered any and all questions there. And it was there, I think, that we rationalized or realized, that they were interested in all kinds of activities in the town, including library fees and cemetery fees, asking staff about that. Certainly not in the region's jurisdiction. Then there was a presentation in the summer. A developer came forward and made numerous accusations about the town not having come to council, not calling us, not inquiring, just making the accusations. The majority of regional council referred the matter to the September 18th Regional Audit Committee. We received, council will recall, on September 5th, our lawyer and staff clarified each of those accusations and each of the claims and refuted them. And we also sent our lawyer to the region to say, you don't have any jurisdiction over these areas. And we've also posted things on our website about this. Then an odd thing happened at the region. That developer came forward waving a check for $50,000 to say that he would pay for the audit. And what's happening here, council, as you know, is that there's these outside forces that keep coming into the town to deal with issues that aren't within their jurisdiction. So the parkland overdedication, that's a town issue. Mr. Hummel has not come here. The first time I met him was following that, and talked about this issue, was following that committee meeting. And I said I'd be pleased to sit down and chat with you about this and help clear this up. I did send him an email, and we were hoping to have a meeting, I suggested, in the intervening weeks. He couldn't make it till next week, and now he said, well, we're going to hold off and see what the region does. So the issue that's here is that of all of the 13 items that were thrown against the wall, the one item that people have difficulty understanding, our residents have difficulty understanding, is this matter regarding the over-dedication of parkland and the development charge credit. We've put out some information about that, but people really don't understand it. It was done appropriately, as far as, we're told that, and we believe that. We answered Mr. Shedden, or we asked Mr. Shedden about that, we asked staff about that, they answered those questions. But this is the one thing that other people in the community, some of whom are here, just can't figure out. And I believed, in retrospect, following that meeting, that the only way that we can help allay the fears, not of Mr. Hummel, not of those regional councillors, because they'll never be satisfied. They will always come up with the latest thing that they want to ask us about. But this is for our residents who are concerned about this, our citizens, our business leaders, etc., who hear this
Right.
and say, what is going on? Mr. Chair, I think an audit of these particular items will answer those questions and answer those concerns. The way the motion is written, it's broad enough to answer all of those questions. So it's undertake an independent third-party audit of all transactions and documents related to. Some folks might want to say, well, I want you to look at this, and I want you to look at this, and I want you to look at this. Let's not scope it, which is what they want to do. Let's keep it broad. All transactions and documents related to the 3.3 acre parkland over dedication and the excess parkland dedication agreement. There's the scope. Anything related to that, which is the way the motion is written, Mr. Chair, will be looked at and answered for the community. It'll come, the motion is suggesting that it goes to KPMG. They were the next ones on the list that bid. They had the next best score in terms of auditing. They have capable people, no doubt, in terms of forensic auditing experts that can undertake this. And also, the public wants this to be known as soon as possible. So instead of going out and doing an RFP on it and then coming back, and I mean, there's another body in Niagara, the NPCA, that's playing that waiting game, and it's been over a year since, and they're still figuring out, well, should we do an audit or should we not? This way, it goes right directly to KPMG, who are certainly capable of doing this, and coming back within a time period of November 2017 to come back to this council and report publicly. Also to circulate this far and wide. Mr. Chair, I think this is something that we must do, not necessarily for those individuals at the region that I said, or others that will probably find fault with us in some other way. But it's for our residents and our businesses. They need to know that what we do is appropriate, what we've done is appropriate. They need to understand this, and they need a third party, independent third party, to look at it broadly, to report back to council, and to give us those answers for the community. So, Mr. Chair, that's why I put forward this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the opportunity of making some comments. I'm happy to support this motion, and in particular, I was happy to second the motion, and in as much as I think colleagues are aware that I have been in opposition to the notion of doing an audit, particularly a forensic audit in the past, I thought I should take just a moment to explain why I support this motion. I think the mayor has done an excellent job of covering the issues. There's one, though, that I particularly want to underline. Let me say that I believe that the vast majority of our residents are fair-minded, open-minded, realistic, knowledgeable, experienced, mature in judgment as they are, have an understanding that the decisions and actions taken by us, their council, whose members, after all, are from amongst themselves, their friends, neighbors, living in the community, committed to the community, that our decisions are likely to be the same decisions and actions that they would probably make themselves, given that we have the best interests of the town in heart and mind, just as they do. I think there's an understanding that every decision is a compromise, a balance between what we want, what we need, what we can afford. And I think that they have a pretty good idea that where there are conflicting interests, decisions are not likely to be popular with everyone. So some degree of discussion is expected out of the business of council and its discussion within the community. What's necessary is that everyone have access to real, timely, complete information regarding what we on council are doing. And we do an awful lot, I think, to bridge the communication gap. There are a whole series of things that we do. We videotape. Cogeco is here. They tape and broadcast our meetings, publish our reports and minutes on the webpage, which we try to make as easily navigable as possible. We provide a synopsis of our business. We do that and more. And what we expect is that we're reaching at least halfway, if not more than halfway, across the communication gap, and we expect that people who are interested will reach out the other way. But if there's a lack of information or, and I don't want to turn particularly negative, Mr. Chair, because I know that we've had a discussion about that.
Right.
But in the face of a deliberate campaign of misleading or unbalanced or fake or negative reporting and destructive editorializing, as I believe has been happening here about this issue and about some others, this would lead even many fair and open-minded people in our community to want reassurance that they can continue to be confident in their council. So we have to do some different things. And one of the things that we're doing, and I'm very pleased that we're doing it, through our communications people, is to reach out into the community and, if necessary, and sometimes it is necessary, to pay for space to show the community what it is that we're doing. I think it's a good thing that we do that, and I'm glad that it's in our plan. But one of the things, and I think a really important thing with regard to the specific issue in question here, is that we do an audit. The results of which we will ensure will be made available in every way that we can, go a long way to showing that our business is conducted in the way in which our residents would want it to be, ethically, legally, without fear or favor, in the best interest of the town and its residents. The motion calls for the auditor to bring its forensic expertise to the exercise, something that I was never happy about, as you can remember. But I believe now that even this is necessary to bring the highest level of confidence to the audit that we can. I want to just repeat very quickly before I finish that this is for the benefit of the vast majority of our residents, again, who are fair-minded, open-minded, and realistic, but who may be seeing this exercise in conflict happening and wanting to hear from the town what it is that is really going on here. And I think that an audit, well publicized, the results of which are well publicized, may go a long way to doing that. So I support this motion. I look forward to this happening as quickly, effectively, and efficiently as it can be. And those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beatty. Anyone else? Councillor Junkin.
Mr. Chair, it is only after much thought and deliberation that I must vote against this motion. I feel the motion is too restrictive and will lead and it is incomplete. I compare this motion to someone making an offer to give me a new truck. At first, I am ecstatic, but when I get to the car lot, the offered truck has no engine, has no brakes, has no wheels, just a new body. It looks good at first glance, but is soon deemed unsuitable. I therefore would like to table an amendment to this motion.
Proceed.
Whereas this council prides itself to be open and transparent in doing the town's business, and whereas all municipal governments strive to operate in a way that secures the trust of its citizens, and whereas one just has to read the letters to the editor in the town paper or merely walk the streets of the town to realize that a disquieting number of residents have lost that trust in this council. Therefore, be it resolved, not only should a third-party auditor fully review the so-called questionable land deal with the Allen Group, but this same third-party audit shall be given full and complete access to the town's financial statements of the last 3 years to determine such items as total debt of the town and full disclosure of all development charges, such as how they were used by the Allen Group and for what purpose. Only after such a complete and thorough examination of the town's financial statements can the citizens of Pelham judge for themselves the honesty and integrity of this council and its staff. I can think of no better way to put an end to all this that's going around town if we could have a third-party auditor tell us that the town's books are indeed in a healthy situation. Thank you.
I'm going to need the amendment. You read it too fast for me to get.
Councillor Junkin, thank you for that. Can I have that so I can, the clerk can?
Just the amendment portion.
Just the amendment, that's all we need.
Yep.
All right. Councillor Junkin, you're tabling that amendment to this particular motion.
Yes.
Is there a seconder? Seeing none, unfortunately, Councillor Junkin, that is nullified. But your information and what you've said has been recorded.
Thank you.
Okay, so that you understand. It's part of, and I hope all of us understand that's part of it. We have conflicting views, that's the way we operate. Anybody else to the main motion? Councillor Kersey, then Mr. Mayor for second.
I'd just like to comment at the end if that's okay.
That's
Mr.
okay.
Chair.
Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me tell you that the last 3 or 4 days have not been pleasant around the Kersey household. My wife refers to me as a grumpy old grouch. I don't like the old part and I don't like the grouch part. So I spent a lot of time writing and trying to purge myself of my thoughts, and I was going to make this great big wonderful presentation at council. But I don't think it's necessary. I think after doing a tour today of the community center with one of the significant donors and some of the comments that were made at a previous meeting that we had, it kind of brought things to a head. And what came out of those two things is that as time council, that we move forward in a positive way. Since March of this year, we have spent time at this council table. We have spent staff time. We have spent taxpayers' money on reports. We have done everything we can to answer the questions that have been put forward by the community. Even unprecedented, we allowed the public to speak directly to the experts that we consulted before we endeavored and undertook any of the actions that we have taken in the previous few years to bring East Fawn Hill forward. So I'm not going to speak negatively. I'm not going to address the Hummel issue. I am going to encourage all of us to move forward in a positive manner. I will support this motion. Do I have doubts that it will answer the question? We see it here even at our own council table. It's not a slam against you, Councillor Junkin. You're entitled to your point of view. Since this came forward in the social media and in the mayor's column, I've already had emails questioning the scoping of the audit. Even though that was really the questions that were focused on at the audit committee at the region. So do I think it's going to take away all the questions in the community? I do not. Do I think it will stop the region? I do not. But I will support this motion because I think we need to present as much as possible as a united council. We have done things together. We have worked well together. We haven't always agreed, but for the most part, we have tried to move the community forward in a positive manner, working together with the best information that we have before us. And that, council, is the way I would like us to move forward. So view my vote as a symbolic vote, if you will. I am voting in favor of this motion, not because I think it will solve the problem, but I think we have to send a strong signal to the players in this game, and it has been a game, that we are united and we will move this community forward in a positive manner. And from here on in, and I have drafted two strong motions, or been an author to two strong motions, specifically telling the region they are outside their jurisdiction, that we will not cooperate and we will not answer any further. And here we are again, talking about the very same matters. So, I'm putting council on notice. I will support this motion. But if we deal with these negativities going forward in anything other than a positive way to move this community forward, I will excuse myself from that meeting. I am not going to spend any more of my energy on that. I'm not going to lose any more sleep over it. Let's move forward, council, in a positive way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. Councillor King, and then I'll come back to you, Mr.
If others don't want to say anything further. Just
Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also will be supporting the retention of KPMG to conduct a forensic audit with full knowledge that that information is going to be presented to the community, reporting their findings. Because along the same lines of what Councillor Kersey is stating, I know that no matter what we do, there is still going to be that negative undertone out there. But at least I feel that this is a positive step that we need to take to clear the air for some, and probably more importantly, to allow staff and all of us around the table to get on with the job that we're here to do. So the dissemination of the information is going to be critical to the community. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor King. And again, do you mind if I'll go to...
Of course.
Councillor Durley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is no poison made that will kill a positive mind, and there is no medicine around that will cure a negative mind. Being positive, I think, is the way to go, building on what Councillor Kersey has said. We definitely need to convince the folks that don't believe in all of the information that is put forward to them. If a third party can do this and say all of the things are in order, the questions that are brought forth by a select few individuals at the region and perhaps a member of the community or two, a developer or two, if in fact a third opinion or third party opinion will clear this up. I think that is the way to go, and I must agree with Councillor Kersey. We've gone too far with this. We've given up human resources, we've given up financial resources, we've given up time and energy that could have been used in a more positive way for something that has been asked and answered many, many times. So let's get on with an audit and get this information out as quickly as possible and say, here it is, whatever it comes. I'm very confident that we have done absolutely nothing wrong. We have had the best of opportunities to get experts to give us opinions and lead us down this path. I'm sure that we have done things properly. The only way to prove it, I guess, to some negative people out there is to get a third party to say it, and I'm fully in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durley. Anyone else? And Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I listened very closely to what Councillor Junkin said, and I'm going to have to disagree with him with his analogy. I think, as I said at the start, this is any and all documents, transactions related to those two items. He highlighted one of them. It was provided to the community, to the public, in terms of the over-dedication amount and the credits and all of that, what it was spent on. That's one of the things that he was looking for. That's all going to be covered. So I don't, I listened quite closely, and I didn't hear anything different than what is already encapsulated in this motion. So, I think we can proceed, and the information that's been requested will come back to this council. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the latitude to speak again.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other members of council? Very quickly, I concur. Having served in municipal government here 15 years and 40 years in my career, there's a time for us to build on prosperity, positivity, and the influence of developing our community. We have seen, some of us who have been here a long time, things have changed, and they have changed for the good. Does that mean there are things that happened that shouldn't have happened? Probably. Are there things that we need to remedy? Yes. I think in course and listening to all of our constituents, it's come back, and I must say as well, but a little, the people, those at the region that have said things this way, they're a minority. They're not the majority. I worked at regional government. These people believe in what they do just as we believe in what we're doing here. So I am hopeful and I am trusting, and I agree also with Councillor Junkin. When this comes back, it's not just the findings themselves. If there are things we need to remedy, we need to take the steps to remedy. And I would look towards our treasurer, who would say that's one of the things about audits. They come back, they tell you, these are the things you've done well, these are the things you can improve, and these are the things to move forward. The time is to move on. There's the time, as someone described in the theater, and one of them, a distinct person here in our community, that time for mudslinging is over. We'll get to the facts, we'll get to the evidence, we'll bring it forward back to this council, to the members of the community, and we'll get these issues resolved. If there's need for more, then we will. On that note, are there any further comments or questions? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Carried. Okay, the second notice of motion, item 15.2, moved by Mayor Augustine, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, and it's the refusal of cash to influence offer. Now, there's quite an extent, but again, I'll ask members of council, do you want me to read all of this out? Is it necessary? I don't. If we can we put it up on the screen? I don't think it's necessary, because I think it's pretty straightforward, if you don't mind me taking some discretion.
Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead,
Would
Mr.
you mind just reading the therefore be it resolved portion, the three
Yeah,
paragraphs?
yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I was asking, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
I will
Mr. Chair.
not bother with the whereas,
Thank
I'll
you.
just deal with the resolution itself.
Thank you.
All right. Therefore, be it resolved that the Pelham Town Council unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the region's audit committee to accept the developer's money to influence regional, or for that matter, town actions, and the Pelham Town Council reaffirms its jurisdiction over Town of Pelham matters and requests the Regional Council to reaffirm spheres of jurisdiction between the region and local municipal corporations as legislated by the Ontario Municipal Act. And that this petition be circulated, resolution be circulated to the Niagara Regional Council for their October 5th, 2017 meeting, to Mr. Rainier Hummel, Niagara developer, to all Niagara municipal councils, to all Niagara MPPs, to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to the local news media, and to be posted on the town's website. Comments or questions? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I alluded to some of this on the last motion, that it was an odd thing when this developer came forward and waived a check to say that he would pay for an audit. A lot of people came and talked to me afterwards about it and sent me emails, sent council emails, I know, how inappropriate that is, that type of behavior, that type of action. First of all, do we want to be the type of community that grants wealth or means great influence and privilege in municipal decision-making? No. We want to give everyone equal access. And so that by an individual doing that, gives them more influence. And I think that came to light after the amendment that was added to the original motion at the regional committee, and that was to actually have that developer, that individual, involved in the audit itself. Kind of like paying for influence, and someone with means to do that. It's not the values that we have as a council. It's not the values that the audit committee should have either, but I'll say that at Regional Council on Thursday night. But the values that we have are one of openness and transparency and accountability, not accountability to those with money, not openness to those with means, but accountability and openness to everyone, regardless of means, regardless of how much money they have or don't have. And my worry would have been, if, and I hope council refuses this, would be that that individual would have preferential access. That's not right. And Mr. Chair, we just went through our strategic planning exercise. It goes against our values, the values of our staff, the values of our council. And Mr. Chair, I think we need to say as loudly as possible, no, we will not be swayed by these dollars for involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have seconded this motion as well, and will support it. Like Councillor Kirsty, I've spent the weekend writing and rewriting and editing. I think I'm going to give you the edited version of the edited version. I'm not going to talk about why I feel it's inappropriate that the Regional Audit Committee made this motion that was outside their jurisdiction, and it's just wrong on that basis. Or about the fact that the offer of money was not the offer to solve a problem, because the problem isn't a question of money, or because it's essentially a stunt to bring attention to what is essentially a fake narrative that the author of that fake narrative understands really well. But I want to underline again, I think the essential message from the mayor. This just feels sleazy. It's wrong. I took a look. It feels sleazy to me. And I think I can describe myself, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure that you can use that word, but I'll ask the clerk. This is an appropriate word.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are not to speak derogatively against any individual.
Then I shan't speak derogatively.
Right.
of that
Continue on,
individual.
but I think
Let me say that I did review the oath that we took, the oath of office that we took
Right.
when we became councillors. And I would say that we are not meant to be induced. And I think that one of the things that would happen if we were to accept this money is that we would look as though we might have been induced, and it's just as bad.
Right.
So I am going to very strongly as I can, ask colleagues to turn down this request. It just does not feel, can I say right? It just does not feel right
Say that.
to me,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Those are
Thank-
my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Junkin.
I didn't really spend a lot of time looking at this motion.
Sure.
One thing I see in the one line, the regions, therefore, be it resolved that Pelham Town Council, excuse me, unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to accept a developer's money to influence. And he is not trying to influence any action by the region or the town. He is trying to look at an action that has already been done. So the word influence isn't appropriate here. What he wants to look into is something that has already been done. So he's not saying, here's 50,000, hire my wife. Here's 50,000, build a bridge. He's saying, here's 50,000, we want to look at your past actions. So myself, I don't think that it's worded right to begin with, but I'll leave that to council.
Okay, so it's a good point, because in fact, the action that that particular individual has stated already been dealt with as part of our audit. So what you're saying, that the wording itself in this motion is to, well, how would you state it?
I have no idea, but I'm just
Yeah,
leaving it to
so what you're
council.
saying, the very first part, where it says that any appropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to accept the developer's money to influence regional town actions, the fact is, you can't. The act is very clear. Doesn't matter whether it's the region or that, you cannot.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah, I understand. I understand exactly where you're coming from.
I'll leave it at that.
So, unless you want to, well, we can't. That's a fact. We can't.
Mr. Chair, I just thought I would bring it to the council's attention. I'm not going to press it any farther. If council's happy with the wording of that motion, then so be it.
Members of council?
The motion's fine.
Councilor Durley?
Okay, I have some comments about this. We've already decided
Yeah.
with the last motion that
That's
we're
what
going
I
to do
did.
an audit.
That's right. That's what I just said, yeah.
Who's going to pay for it now is the question. One question that I would like to ask, and I'm not sure that I can get an answer around this table.
By all means.
If said monies were used to perform the audit, the developer gave money to the audit committee. The audit committee wants to give it to us in order to request that we do an audit, which we already said we're going to do. If we use that money to create a contract between KPMG and the town of Pelham, how could there possibly be a third-party involved at all? How could anybody else influence it? The action is between the town, and the results of the auditor will come back to the town, and the town will give it to the public. The audit committee from the region will be moot. The developer who offered the money will be moot, absolutely silent. The agreement will be between the two parties, the town of Pelham and the auditor, KPMG, if in fact that is the auditor. So whoever pays for that audit, it doesn't matter, because the agreement will be between party A, the town of Pelham, and party B, KPMG.
That's correct.
There would be no third party, no fourth party, nobody else would be involved. There would be no influence whatsoever on the thing. We've already agreed that we're doing an audit.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilor Durley. Mr. Mayor, maybe you can help clarify
Thank you,
the
Mr.
very
Chair.
first part of that resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess it wasn't appended here because it hasn't been endorsed by Regional Council. But the motion from the Audit Committee is that the Audit Committee endorses the contribution made by Mr. Hummel in the amount of $50,000 for the express purpose of an audit into municipal credit transaction. And so the other motion was worded to mirror these and be more specific, and land purchase as requested at the Regional Audit Committee. So, but here's the influence portion. That the Audit Committee requests the town of Pelham conduct an independent third-party audit as described in this resolution with the assistance of the Niagara Region's procurement and internal control department, and in conjunction with the region's audit committee and with Mr. Hummel. So all of these individuals, the procurement and internal controls department would be involved, the region's audit committee members would be involved, and Mr. Hummel would be involved. That's where the cash for influence comment comes from, that there's the money, but it's conditional on influence and involvement. So the word is the right word, I think, Mr. Chair, and I hope that answers the councillor's concerns.
That doesn't appear in this motion. In
No,
fact,
that's, yeah. Councillor Turley?
this is where my confusion is. None of those comments are included in the motion that you put before us here. And the way this came before us, having gone to the newspaper first and gone to an article that you published first, to me was completely wrong as well. You did not consult anything with us. Had we consulted and that came through, I probably would have had a better opinion, but this being surprisingly put upon us in ways that didn't happen around this table upset me.
I understand, thank you.
Councillor Ribbiak, and then anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to point out that the motion is with respect to the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee. And I think that it includes the entire request. Yes, indeed, there was, you can call it the Audit Committee request to accept the developer's money, but it's the Regional Audit Committee's request that we are rejecting, I think, in its entirety. And if I might offer a motion that someone may second, to drop the words in that unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee and strike the words to accept the developer's money to just take those words out, it would, I think, settle that issue, that it's about the request in its entirety,
Say
as
it again,
opposed to.
Go ahead, Councillor Ribbiak, say it again.
So I would offer an amendment that we strike the words to accept the developer's money. So that it now reads, therefore be it resolved that Pelham Town Council unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to influence regional and town actions.
We need, okay, go ahead. We need a seconder for that?
I will need a seconder, obviously.
Anybody? Let me just interject for a minute. I don't have a problem, except I was looking more, the town of Pelham unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to influence town actions, not
Fine.
regional actions. Region is their own
Agreed.
jurisdiction. Really what the request is, and you can help me, Mr. Mayor, they were asking us, they were requesting that we, besides money, but that there be other resources dedicated to doing and helping us with the audit. Is that not, in a nutshell, what it was? So and to make it more clear, that the town of Pelham Town Council unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to influence town actions, period.
Yep, works for me.
Everybody good with that? I don't want to, I'm in the chair, I shouldn't be doing that.
good.
Wordsmithing. So that would be my motion if someone, or my amendment if someone wishes to second it.
Okay, so that's, and then seconded by Councillor Kersey?
So you're taking out the words regional and, is that
Yeah,
correct?
region has, quite honestly, has no real relevance in that. Really, it's what about, we've said it before, is the influence that it has on our actions as a town. Right? Whether it's money, jurisdictional, there are all other issues that come into play as well. Are you good with that?
Yeah, so we're striking the words to accept everything after audit committee up to influence town's actions.
Or you could do it the other way, if you really want to combine both, is you could say that the town of Pelham unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee and to accept the developer's money. Do we want to state that specifically?
No.
To influence
think
town
the-
actions?
Mr. Chair,
It's the entire request.
I think this whole issue is about, as I said, influence.
Right.
And I think it's, for me, it's important about the accepting developers' money to influence town actions.
Yeah, so take out regional.
So it's the regional piece, I accept that because it's the jurisdictional
their call.
matter.
Right, so
It's
they
their
can do
call.
what they want, if they want to take this money. But I think it's important, the portion about accepting developers' money is important.
Okay, so,
So
So this is
maybe
what
there's
they're-
two amendments or something.
Happened.
all right, so what we're saying is,
More motion.
It's gone.
It's gone.
all right, so let's try this slowly. Therefore, be it resolved that the Pelham Town Council unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee and the acceptance of developers' money.
No, so it's going to read,
Right.
if, so you're voting on this amendment right now, Mr. Chair?
Okay,
So then it would read, to reject the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee, sorry,
right.
to influence the town's actions.
Yes.
Yes.
So that would be the effect of this amendment, which you need to.
Which
vote on.
encompasses all the other.
And has been seconded.
That's been seconded by, is everybody understands that? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
So there is an amendment on the floor, Mr. Chair, made by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Kersey, to remove the words "to accept a developer's money" and the words "regional and." If the amendment is carried, the motion would read in that paragraph, therefore be it resolved that Pelham Town Council unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to influence town actions. And you need to vote on the amendment first.
All in favor of the amendment?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ray.
So, my understanding of the audit committee's request encases the acceptance of the $50,000 from Mr. Hummel. Does it not?
From what I understand, Mr.
So if we go
I
with
wasn't there, I
this,
don't
we're
know.
rejecting the whole audit committee recommendation, which speaks to the $50,000. We're just rejecting it outright.
The
So I
whole
think
thing.
it cleans it up, it gets away from, we all know what we're trying to say there.
Yes.
We're not taking the money, we're gonna do it our own way with an independent third party, without his money, period, right?
Right.
Okay. Then I'll still support the amendment as put forward.
So we're going to accept the amendment to drop the quote-unquote acceptable list money and the regional and. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now that Councillor Kersey has explained it in that way, because all those items that weren't read out, the whereas accepting these
That
funds would
includes
grant
all
great
those.
wealth, whereas accepting the money from the developer's behavior, which is beneath the high standard the public expects from members of the audit committee. I accept that now that he's explained it that way.
Okay, good. That's.
Thank you.
All right, so we're good with this? All in favor of the amendment? Carried. Now back to the main motion. And therefore be resolved that the town council unequivocally rejects the inappropriate request by the Region's Audit Committee to influence town actions, and then after that, that the town reaffirms its jurisdiction over town of Pelham matters and requests the Regional Council to reaffirm the spheres of jurisdiction between regional and local municipal corporations as legislated by the Ontario Municipal Act, and that this resolution be circulated to Niagara Regional Council for their October 5th meeting, to Mr. Rainier Hummel, Niagara developer, and to all Niagara municipal councils, to all Niagara MPPs, to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and to local news media and posted on the town's website. Are we good? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak to this. Again, I'm not going to draw it out. Mr. Hummel made a very generous offer,
Respectful.
but wealth carries with it responsibility.
Right.
And part of that responsibility, I believe, is to contribute to the community for good. So I'd issue a challenge to Mr. Hummel, since we're unequivocally refusing the $50,000, that he take that $50,000 and contribute it to a charity of his choice
Okay.
for the betterment of the community. And in fact, if you'd like, we could probably find a place for him on our donors board in the Pelham Community Center. And because certainly his developments will benefit from the community center.
Understood.
I just got to finish. I'm not almost there. Almost there. I'm
I'm
being
looking at whether
positive.
it's germane to the thing. But
I'm-
go ahead, I'll give you the
I'm being
latitude.
positive.
Okay, I know you are.
Also, I would invite Mr. Hummel to bring forward his developments. As we all know, he still owns land in this community.
Yes, he does.
And I can tell him that none of this, and I'm sure I speak for all of council and for all of senior staff, that none of this will influence our decisions with respect to his development proposals. His development proposals that were brought forward, both to this council and also to the Committee of Adjustment, were not rejected because, as he put it, he was a whistleblower. They were rejected because they didn't live up to the expectations of the planning documents that we as a council have created. So all we ask from you, Mr. Hummel, is a bit of respect for our community and the visions that we have encased in our development documents. If you do that, and you come before us and before our senior staff, we'll work with you in a very positive, open, and welcoming manner. And you will benefit by being part of a great and growing community. So, Mr. Chair, I will support this motion. I think it captures all of the things we want to say. But I also want to extend an olive branch to Mr. Hummel and say, the door is not closed. We are open for business. We welcome you in our community. And let's get together and move this community forward in a positive way. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the latitude. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, so back to the main motion, and we will accept the, your invitation, and I think the mayor has said this as well. We've invited him to come, and we certainly do not want to, because the time for that kind of angst is over. It's time to get on with business, get on with building the community and building as we should. So this hopefully will, along with the audit, doesn't mean it comes to an end. It means that there's still some things we'll have to look at, and trusting that this will be fulfilled in a very comprehensive, very positive, and strengthen our community abilities. On that note, all in favor? Against? Councillor jumped in. All right, carried. Thank you. That concludes this portion of the notice of motion, and Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Papp. I appreciate you serving as the deputy mayor in that case. As members of the community will know, we did add an item to